Welcome to the Generation AI podcast, where we demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. I am your host, JC Bonilla, joined by the insightful co-host, Ardis Kadiu. Good evening, sir.
Hey JC, how's it going?
Good, good.
A little late for you.
My gosh, I'm missing my beauty sleep because of you, Ardis. My hair is not going to come out nice tomorrow. What are we going to do?
We gotta wrap up our 3 episode series, so we gotta get this in time.
Everybody, we're having a gigantic week, so we're recording off hours, but episode 2 is dropping today. We started a series to just basically make sure that everyone understands that this whole conversation about agents also lives within Element, and we've been doing a series of 3. So drop 1 was last week, and today we're going to be continuing that conversation, artists. By the way, episode one became required listening in Element, and we getting really good feedback from it. So, shall we recap what happened on episode 1? Should listeners not had the pleasure of hearing us for, I don't know, hour and a half talking about all things agentic? Should we do that recap?
Yes, let's do that. I think that's a really, really good recap. And when I actually went back and listened to it myself in order to make sure that we explained everything correctly, and I thought it was really good.
Yeah, it's a good episode. We are doing so. Please go back and listen to this episode and just do this as a foundation, as a teaser, and it's an episode that is worth your time. We wanted to do this series because agentic AI strategy is top of mind for everybody. As we speak, there's been drops that address the gap between AI today and agentic, and that gap is shortening. AI, dropping operator, Gemini, and multiple other players are basically saying, here we are. So, with that spirit and energy, Element is raising his hand and saying, here we are. Episode number 1 spoke about a bit of the theory on agentic. Artist, one of your lines that you've created a blog post, reason, adapt, and action. Can you remind everybody what that means in the context of agentic?
Yeah, so AI systems or agentic AI systems, the brain of these systems is those large language models, and the models are reasoning models that are getting really, really smart. So they understand what the task is or what the goal is, and they kind of think through that in order to accomplish certain goals. So that's the reasoning part. The adoption part is that changes after it does certain things or tries different things in order to accomplish that goal, and the adoption and the change. And then the last one is all about kind of the tools and making sure that it reaches and acts and does work and reaches within the other systems as well. So 3 things: very, very large brains that does the reasoning. It needs to adopt through and think about the environment in which it is operating, and then perform actions on that environment in order to accomplish that goal.
Something that happened in the episode, we also spoke about the components and the framework that make up all things generative AI agentic. And this evolution, by the way, if you also want a historical evolution of all things pre AI or generative AI, it's part of the episode. But there is a really important component that I love for you to recap so we can jump into episode number 2. We spoke about a shift or a beautiful built-in component of agents and assistants, and how these layers of types of agentic being horizontal, meaning players who want to address the needs of an agent or an assistant, and they think at it from a generalized point of view. So my technology will serve you whether you are a retailer, healthcare, university, or a CrossFit gym. But we also spoke about vertical, which is where Element plays. In vertical, we think about SaaS solutions, software solutions that specialize in a domain, and we feel that's probably the next frontier where impact, in this case, action, will deliver basically the next gain. So before we jump into episode number 2, that component, agents to assistants, can you distill that in the presence of horizontal and vertical? Because here's where we unpack episode number 2, right?
Agents are the building blocks that we talked about. So agents are really, the generic building blocks, and the way they work is there's a brain, there's a reasoning engine, there's tools, and then there's context, this long-term memory. Now, when you build on top of that, once you start introducing multiple tools, and once you start introducing, specific specializations around these particular agents, you have a lot of them that are combined with multiple agents, so this multi-agent architecture, and they do work for a specific thing, then they're called assistants. So it's specialized. Assistants are role-specific agents, like admissions advisors or financial aid, assistant or a marketing strategist, and they're pre-configured agents, really. So they're specialized in the respective domains and offer targeted expertise and functionality for that specific domain.
I've always loved that version that you present of an agent, horizontal, basically doing multiple tasks. But I can specialize that agent and it derives an assistant. And this is where vertical solutions or this kind of domain expertise allows us to do agent that knows financial aid or becomes an athletic coach, or let's go back to verticalization and true hyper specialization. I'm going to be an academic advisor, but with a twist of academic athletics. So I'm able to do academic advising in the presence of athletics or athletes. And that type of nuance and niche is where vertical solutions and assistance in the element framework become very, very interesting. All right, recap done. Artists, today's episode builds on this idea that now I have one hyper specialized, awesome assistant. And this assistant is going to take me through the motions of, I don't know, how do I do student success? How do I handle, my events? Today, we're seeing versions of an operator, the agent from OpenAI, that it's booking tickets on behalf of a user. Now, today's episode deals with the idea that what if you have multiple of them? Multi-collaboration of assistants in elements terminology or agents. And this idea of having multi-collaboration as an ecosystem of agents is emerging. It's a really interesting thing because what happens here is the word orchestration goes so high up in our kind of terminology of what AI should be doing. And it's a really, really important conversation we want to have. Not theoretical. We want to really emphasize on the how does implementing agents, plural, becomes fascinating, and multi-agent collaboration, it's a thing in itself. So, artists, can you set the stage? When I say multi-agents, what am I talking about? And can you take it one step forward and what am I talking about in day-to-day operations? So I got it. I know what an assistant is or an agent is. What about 20 of them?
Yeah. So when you're, maybe we should define this a little bit. So when you talk about multi-agent, we talked last episode, we talked about assistants and agents. They're interchangeably in quite a few places. However, assistants are specialized agents. And when we think about, the agent architecture, they're building blocks, and these building blocks can build on top of each other. So it means that an agent can have sub-agents, right? So they can reason about, rather than having tools, now that agent can have other agents that it can pass work off. Rather than passing it to tools, it can pass that work off to these other agents. So, what we're talking about today is the idea that we can now have complex agentic systems that break down the work to be done into subtasks and then pass those subtasks on to individual other AIs or agents in order for that work to be done. And they're usually called orchestrators. And these orchestrator agents can be one layer, or you can have multiple layers. So let's take a real example. And this is an example that we actually use today at Element. And this is a campaign manager agent. So a campaign manager agent is a very real agent that we've built in order to build a marketing, campaign in Element. And this marketing campaign is really the typical, email, SMS, MMS, texting,
Smoke signals.
flow, smoke signals. Right. So this is your communications plan, right? This is a campaign communications plan builder, and it does everything from planning the campaign all the way down to actually building and deploying it into the CRM. So in order to get that done, we need, it needs to break it down, the task, into multiple different tasks and multiple different stages. So when you think about how many agents are used to accomplish these tasks, it can be quite a few of them. In our case, there is a reasoner agent, there is the campaign assistant, which is an orchestrator. That is responsible for actually thinking through what the task is. The user asks the agent to provide a campaign, and the assistant, the agent can then ask, well, I need a few pieces of information, just like a real person would, like a marketing professional would ask, well, who's the audience? What kind of communications? How long do you feel like you want to do? Is there any special content? What do you want to drive? What's the goal of the campaign? So you can go back and forth with a marketing AI, a marketing agent, and then it can produce a outline for you. It says, okay, great. Based on what you told me, here's an outline of what I think this campaign can look like. And it produces some pseudo content around it. Basically, what are the topics of each communication? What's the flow? What type of communication is going to be? So it's like pseudo campaign. Now, you can go back and forth and you can say, okay, this is great, or this is, let's tweak it. Let's add another communication. Let's make sure we focus message number 2 around this particular topic. So that's the orchestrator, or that is the campaign reasoner. Now, once we say, okay, this is great, what happens underneath is that agent breaks up the task into each one of those communications and passes it on to a communication builder agent. So that communication builder agent is, again, specialized in taking one message and one content and now creating the content for that particular communication. However, it also is specialized, and depending if the communication was an email versus an SMS, it passes it on to a writer, and that writer is producing the content for the SMS, it's producing the contents for the email. It also, once the content is produced for that particular communication, it hands it back to the writer, and the writer goes back and says, well, okay, based on the content that you produced, let me go pass it on to the art director and says, hey, I have the copy ready. Can you give me images that meet this particular copy and these topics? The art director goes in the media library, retrieves the right images, passes it back on. So essentially now we have a communication, one person who's building one communication using multiple, these agents, retrieves the assets, and then passes it back. Once it has all the assets, it passes it on to the HTML builder agent, or the actually email builder. And that's where the content that it was written gets produced and put into HTML and kind of goes through a layout component and lays that out. So now we've seen that there is actually 4 layers of different agents that are handing work to each other. That is now broken down to one communication. Each one of these communication agents works in parallel. So if you had 10 communications, those go together and they each get done. And now the work gets passed back down to the campaign manager, and the campaign manager says, great, you created all these communications for me. I'm going to hand this off to my automation expert, which is going to put all of these pieces in a workflow for me, in a sequence, right? So it hands each one of those pieces off, and that creates a workflow in Element, right, in the system. So that's whole workflow of the agentic system that's happening underneath. Of course, I kind of bypassed a couple additional helper agents and a few others that are doing, things underneath, like, the copy that's being written and with the tone of the school and so on and so forth. So I wanted to kind of explain that because that's an example of what we're talking about, a multi-agent architecture. And we can call it, the top particular job can be, we can call it the assistant, but it's facilitated by multiple of these agents underneath.
So there is such much beautiful parallels of what you just explained in an agentic, multi-collaborative, multi-agent infrastructure to how the real world works. And I'm going to recap so I can have you react to the challenges of this deployment, Ardis, because this is what's happened, everybody. What Ardis just did, in a way, is how him and our product leaders, right, have thought about divvying up the skills that AI agents need to have so you can go end to end. So an example was someone has to think about the strategy, the orchestrator, and then there has to be an agent that specializes on making this type of creative content on HTML versus SMS, and there's an agent that does workflows and whatnot. So there's going to be, and then I like how you've used early on the idea that there may be hierarchy here, right? There may be a sequential. It's all at play. But before we go there, like the implications of how do you slice and dice? The real world just works like that. There's someone who's going to think about, let's message everybody on, I don't know, our program in financial engineering. Let's make it about, these really interesting play that is going to take with a new shift in politics and then how financial instruments will change, right? So also like that's the creative strategy. And then you start thinking about the segmentation, and these guys, I think, are going to be really good on emails. So let's go to our email writer or, copywriters, and then the art director. So what has happened there is that there's an organization structure of creative that is probably have creative kind of art directors, copywriters, and maybe like a strategist, at least three. Someone made that decision. An agency expert, a marketing firm, your own academic department, you have that structure and that's how you operate. And you go end to end. So Ardis, back to Element. For your example of campaigns, you may have, I don't know, 17 agents all orchestrating and with different hierarchies. So what are the practical applications for you as you think about Element and how you can generalize that? How do I divvy up my things so that I can have agentics? Do I just let the system divvy up for me? Do I need to call it out and say this is an AI task? How do you right size, if anything, the specialization of an agent so they can all be orchestrated, right? So it's a really interesting deployment question and design.
Yeah. So this is where we now go back to what we talked in our first episode around specialization of these platforms, the horizontal platforms and the vertical platforms, and how they're being built.
Yes.
So this is really, really interesting, right? And kind of what that looks like is you're essentially writing the job descriptions of each one of these agents, and you're being very specific, and you're saying you're essentially writing, you're going to do this, this, and this. Here's the access to the tools that you have. This is how, if you need something, you're going to talk to this other agents. And this is how you're going to pass information back and forth. And at the end of the day, this is how you're going to communicate. So you're writing all of the job descriptions, and you're wiring all of them together in order to accomplish larger and larger tasks. The benefit of that is that you can kind of do a lot of different things and you have a lot of flexibility. So that's the horizontal platform that we have. And today there is a whole bunch of them. And if you're interested, there is platforms like agent.ai, which is an interesting one. There is relevance.ai.
Relevance, yep. We work with that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And we even have ones that even Salesforce, the Agent Force is a generic horizontal agentic platform, right? That is doing a lot of that work to kind of have the building blocks. And now you're building on top of it. Then go to the last one, which is kind of a combination of what we had in the past, which is the system of record or the data platforms, and now we're putting the agentic layer on top of that data layer, which I believe is the more kind of closer mental model to and essentially the best ROI that you can get today, which is similar to the CRM data or Agentforce or the Element Bolt AI platform, where you now overlay and capture these workflows natively underneath the system of record, right? And you have agents that are specifically built for those individual tools, but they're built on top of your data layer, and they know and they can reason on top of the workflows that you've already built before, but now it's more agentic rather than you having to put all these pieces together. The agents are able to get the work done in the context of the actual work.
Yeah. Artist, your analogy to a job description, it's brilliant. I've never seen it that way, but think about expanding that analogy and summarizing all the things you just mentioned under this premise, right? A job description for a horizontal agent sounds like you should be able to do campaigns using modern marketing tech stacks. Horizontal. Vertical means you should be able to write marketing campaigns for young adults, specifically freshman transfer students. Verticalization. And
Mhm.
HubSpot and I don't know, whatever technology stack. So also what you've done is just totally verticalize versus horizontal. The second aspect that you mentioned is that, and this is where the orchestration comes in. A job description says you need to be able to write marketing campaigns for modern tech stack. You should be able to collaborate with stakeholders in different academic departments. So what is just happening there is that that second job description is a separate agent. The first one, it's the assistant or the agent, the marketer. The second one is their workflow, and so on and so forth. So basically, what I think you just did there with that example is that you open up the very tangible, this is what agentic multi systems look like in a really, really simple way is the deconstruction of jobs, the job descriptions and the functions in each of those lines, potentially representing a agent or an assistant. So I like that a lot. And I know that I may be butchering certain aspects, but it's a really easy way to see it and why a human, right, could be a representation of 5 different assistants or 55 different assistants because I do at least 5 different functions or roles and that type of thing, right? Does that make sense to you? So
Yeah, yeah.
how do you like that translation?
Exactly. So I really, I think that's spot on. And this analogy to organizations and how agents works to get jobs done or to accomplish goals are very, very similar to how we operate in organizations in our jobs. It's really how AI and the capabilities of AI are now being portrayed. If you remember, or we talk a lot about the capabilities of these AI systems to do the work that I can do in 5 minutes, the work that I can do in 5 hours, the work that I can do in 5 days, and then 5 months. So, but however, that work is very complex and it's a combination of different things and different specialties. And I use different tools to accomplish that work. And that's how these agents are being mirrored. Now they have job descriptions they look very similar to somebody that works for an organization or for a school, and that job description can accomplish, like you said, many different capabilities, or they need different skills in order to accomplish those, and they collaborate with other people in the organization to get job work done. So are going to be our third episode in terms of thinking like the AI workforce and what does that look like. Not necessarily replacing humans, but kind of living alongside and kind of mirroring those organizational behaviors and those organizational maps in how we think about it today. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in our third episode. But today, we just want to really demystify that these agentic systems, these multi-agent systems, are specifically built in order to accomplish knowledge work. And the way knowledge work is done today is through, through using tools and research and kind of having context and building, assets and building outputs out of that. And that's how, the agents are mimicking what we do every single day, and they're mirrored, right? They're mirrored in terms of capabilities.
So I have an agent. Agent can be specialized, emergent, and assistant, and this is where verticalization, in our point of view, it's going to be a tremendous impact. And in the terms of the prompts, reasoning, adapting, and acting, vertical solutions and assistants probably have a better impact to us in terms of how it acts. So, and our last point today is that you can basically start creating multiple of them, and the orchestration is what creates these multi-agentic systems. Very crude, very simple, 12-second summary of almost an episode and a half. 5 minutes ago, Ardis, you mentioned ROI. I don't know the answer to this, and if you do, I'd love to see how you're thinking about it. But as someone who comes from a background of measurement, right? I'm used to measuring marketing orchestration in the human world through the lens of, I don't know, return investment, metrics. Usually there's a call to actions and you can tag it. So these effects where you orchestrate, our creator gets together with the strategies and the copywriter, and also the campaign gets a lot of buzz, right? Success. The campaign gets a lot of, I don't know, activations, success. How do we consider success? How are you starting to think about success in agentic, agentic systems? Is it the same thing that we just, if we have a KPI or call to action and everyone registers for the event or everyone deposits, so it's successful? Or do we have other layers that are going to be able to tell us this multi-agentic system is very successful? What do you think about success? How do we measure success for these multi-agentic systems?
Yeah, there's three ways that you can think about it, right? And really calculating
Really?
the
You know three
ROI for
ways
our
already?
agents.
My gosh. Seriously, I don't know the answer here. We just kind of having this conversation. Go, go, go.
But it's very complex, right? But it's really essential, right? For if we're going to deploy and justify these deployments, so really companies and organizations, like we're really developing a lot of these frameworks and how to think about it. But there's three ways. One of them is performance comparison studies. So what that means is that you think about AI matches, let's say 80% human accuracy, but achieved higher volume, right? So let's say leading to productivity, like a recalibration of productivity metrics. So essentially, you compare the performance against a human, right? So and you say, hey, the AI was able to do this a lot faster. It was able to make it 80% accurate, and that's the performance comparison framework.
Let's go back to financial engineering. So the agent is able to create a soup to nuts copy that is all by financial engineering, is real. It's in context. It brings the tonality of the school, all these type of things. Or some of the examples we've been seeing, the AI takes an exam, and scores at the 99 percentile. Those type of things. Is that what you're talking about?
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. So the job that a human can do, the AI is able to do that replicate it at certain accuracy. And then you can now say, remember the test? It's like, hey, the AI is able to do this at this,
Series
this
and
efficiency.
LSATs.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Right. But now it's around the work. So that's one, performance comparison against the human. The second one is a financial outcome framework, right? So you can build these financial outcome frameworks. So essentially, you can connect AI tasks to productivity gains, cost savings.
I do more with less.
Right, exactly. So like you have the same amount of people, but now those people are able to do more work. So you're tying in to a financial outcome or goal. You're saving cost because you might not be hiring two people, you might be hiring just one person. And it's maybe generating, like there's some revenue generation component as part of that. This AI is able to kind of bring in more revenue because of X. So the financial outcome, framework is the second one.
I'm laughing right now. I'm having this mental picture of if these systems are basically the composition of job descriptions in the actual world, right? So all of us with job descriptions, we have to take bathroom breaks, we go to meetings, we get emotional. All that baggage ain't present on the on these multi-agentic systems. So by definition, they're gonna kick our butts in terms of productivity of financial frameworks, right? Because they are so good at producing, and they are not human in that sense. And that inconsistency that makes us human is how production sometimes goes south. So anyway, just a little bit of yeah, AI doesn't take bathroom breaks, so it should be able to go faster.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens now is that you're essentially changing your benchmarks. Like you're recalibrating the productivity metrics, which is interesting. And that's really the third part of the ROI is like, can you lift up the whole organization to essentially say, because of these measurements, that account for the AI capabilities and efficiencies, we're going to lift up the productivity metrics that we have. So rather than now the norm is, hey, I'm going to send out 10 emails a day, or I'm going to reach out to 10 students a day. It's like the metric is raised, and it's like, no, you can reach out to 50 students a day rather than just 10 students a day. So that now brings in a different ROI to the organization. So three different ways, right? ROI is, how does this AI compare to humans or to human accuracy, right? The second one is around kind of the productivity gains that an individual can gain, right? And the cost savings at the individual level. And the third one is around the productivity metrics being raised and being changed because of the AI capabilities for the whole organization, right? So what is that new capability now? So when you do your modeling, you're measuring 50 emails or 50 outreach messages that you send out versus 10, and that's where you gain your ROI now.
Artist, I am genuinely impressed and surprised by your answer. It's so thoughtful and I think right on the money. I really like that. It's kind of like a cumulative approach in terms of measuring ROI for AI. We should do a whole episode on this. Anyway, we are doing this, and as a higher education edtech leader, I like to say we're probably the first ones who are writing this chapter. Besides us in higher education, who else is doing this well from your point of view? I'm curious to see, and you have a really good foresight. And one of the things I admire about you is that you see it and you connect the dots way faster than me. Who is doing it right? That because this is early. Everybody, this is early. We're probably gonna end up
Yeah.
connecting these dots and see it in a few months. But do you really see intent and technology that it's doing it well, or industries that is doing this well?
Yeah, I mean you're seeing it quite a bit on the marketing side. So on the marketing side, you have companies that are focusing specifically on that are focusing on B2B marketing. They're building what are called AI SDRs and this outreach model that's happening. So marketing is, I wouldn't say templatized, but the idea of outreach and communication building and measurement, that can be,
Yeah, because
that's part of it.
there's these motions that you can
Yeah.
become granular. So in this case of the job description, so you can then throw them into agentic systems. And yeah, I can see how the orchestration it speaks very well marketing. That makes a lot of sense.
Right. So that's one of the ones. And then when you think about other areas as well, you think about engineering or coding, and that's another area where these agentic systems are becoming really, really powerful with Devin and Cursor and a few other products that are essentially generating code. Replit is another one. You have, so many of these essentially platforms now that are generating full built applications or or out of the box applications, because coding is one of the most interesting and most accurate things that comes out of these LLMs. So the development world is actually taking quite a bit of that. And then you see it also in the customer success world, right? Or customer support world. This was the first one to essentially, or this customer success support world was the first ones, right? It used to be with chatbots, and kind of it evolved to just, these agents that were just doing, responses and very simple one shot, chatbots or conversational interfaces. And then now we've gone into agentic models where, of course, Element is part of that, right? But we're kind of in the student. So that's one specific use case, but you see it with other products. You see it with Agent Force, that they're focusing on that. You see it with HubSpot. You see it with Intercom, and a lot of different other vertical specific, customer support agents as well. One of the, really interesting other areas that is very specific is around legal. There's just so many of them, JC, but I feel like those are the ones that we touch, or we kind of see every single, in the kind of the world quite a bit.
So, okay, I hear you. There are places where this is being done, but adoption and technology enablement are not the same, artists. And just take the first one, and we have been having this marketing use case. I come from a basically world-class marketing agency prior to rejoining you here at Element. And brother, these type of world-class agencies, we're not thriving in the adoption of AI in these type
Yeah.
of systems. So just because it's there, that doesn't mean that the legal systems or the marketing systems are being used. So if I see it there, and give it to me in higher education, right? And I think I have also an answer for this. But if I see it there, how do I bring it home and how do I adopt it? So who is doing well and also adopt it? If I were to give you that reference point, because I think that's different, you know?
I don't, to be honest, I don't think many institutions are doing it well at all, or are there yet. They're just really on their first phase of the journey, and they're really thinking about, well, where does AI really fit into my strategy? And they're not really thinking about the systems as a way to kind of get jobs done and to get work done. So they're still thinking about use cases. Where can I use AI or generic AI around specific tasks? And they're not thinking about it at the job level component, right? So it's really hard to start, thinking like, when is that adoption going to be available, or when is that adoption going to start? Is 2025 going to be the year? And we certainly hope so, because we at Element at least are deploying this and building this systems that can, reduce the time that's needed to accomplish this task. So we talked about those ROI components. It's amazing how effective this AI systems are, and agents, in order to get to time to value and to reduce, the work that people have to do, and how fast they can get stuff done. So I don't know. I mean, I don't, to be honest, I don't know where, like what's the holdup.
Yes, I agree, and that's why I'm asking, right? So if I see the technology continuing to advance, the use cases are painted on the wall, but we choose not to hang the painting, and the adoption is lagging. And it's even more true on our partners in higher education. There's something about the mindset, artists, that I think that needs to change in many of us. I've given this example to our teams, to you multiple times. It just reminds me so much of 2000, early 2000 vibes with the transformation, the digital transformation that we perceive
Hmm.
in higher education. So we have online applications, everything can be digitized, and yet we printed the goddamn application in the dossier so that faculty can't read and review the application. So there was just basically a mind shift that took years to evolve, in that submission, because this idea I'm going to submit to do things differently, it's part of this process and evolution. I would only say, Art, is that for me, as I think about multi agents and how we start thinking about differently, we need to unlock many of us to do basically the connection, the high touch work that agentic systems can empower us to do, right? So starting to see it as the enabler, because it's not about job displacement. And oh my gosh, Ardis and JC just spoke about all the, line by line in my JD, in my job description, is going to be taken by AI. No, the contrary is that, you get to automate those things. So the part in your job description that required that intuitive, high, very human thing, then it's kind of what you do, right? And I think that's the part that is really, really exciting. All that to ask you, I would say the last question as we try to wrap up. We speak a lot on this podcast about the benefit of human in the loop. So what is the human doing in multi-agentic systems? So if am I just watching and letting these awesome things take over? My point here is like, there's actually a place where you don't watch. You just basically get redeployed to things that you don't want the AI to do for you today. Or fill in the blank, artist. What is the role of the human in these multi-agentic systems and ecosystems?
So, I mean, I have my own ideas, but the role of the human in this AI systems is going to change. And right now, AI is, we like to frame it as AI as a tool that enhances productivity rather than replacing jobs, right?
Exactly.
So that's today. Now, 2 years from now or 2026, we just don't know what those capabilities are, and we don't know what the systems are going to be able to do. Are robotics going to be advanced enough? Are these models going to be advanced enough that they can do a lot more work than the knowledge work that we can do today? Sure. So the evolution is going to be there. How is that going to affect work? I don't know. But for sure, your job today and our jobs today are not going to be the same, right? If I look at my day-to-day work from a year ago to today, I'm still as busy as I was, if not more. However, my type of work has changed. Now I'm
Exactly.
interacting with AIs in order to bounce ideas off of, to produce new content, to kind of get things done a lot faster than I was able to before and able to handle more. So it works a little bit differently. And of course, you can say, well, you're probably the CEO, you're the CEO of the company, and that's a very different thing. But it still changes for a lot of folks, right? You see it in that element with other folks in the organization. Their jobs are changing, and some of the things that would have taken a lot longer, they're taking shorter. So the jobs are not going away. What the evolution is that at least I see is this notion of us becoming managers of AI agents. So even we talk about the individual contributor today. Well, there's no longer an individual contributor because that individual contributor has an army of AI agents ready at their disposal in order to accomplish work. So they become orchestrators of work. They become kind of managers, and they become folks who are project managers and so on and so forth. So you are transitioning from actually getting the work done yourself and from a craftsman, right? You're becoming now an orchestrator and somebody who's organizing work and who can kind of orchestrate things. And we've talked about this in our prior episodes around the skills that you need to build to the job and kind of what you need to go and build towards. So if you're somebody who's focused specifically on one task and you're very, very good at that thing, most likely AI can do that better than you in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So folks who are collaborating and kind of putting pieces together, that is probably the model that we're going to move towards. And I don't know how long it's going to last, but I'm very, very optimistic that we're going to come back and talk about this in 6 months or a year, and things are going to be evolving. And we're going to be talking, oh, wow, what the hell were we thinking? A year ago or 2 years ago, things have completely changed.
My retired father cannot understand how I called a good, productive work day the one where I have not left my home. I've been in front of a screen the entire time. I've answered emails and then basically attended meetings. So this idea that there's a shift in the ways of working and productivity the metrics of productivity are all basically compounded, that it needs to happen in the presence of AI because the speed in which they work is also human-like, that it's not one agent or one assistant, it's multiple of them, and it's all orchestrated, and they are able to reason, act, and adapt. It's literally what's in front of us. And the last thing they just mentioned in this episode is that evolution, it's dynamic and it's happening in front of us. That's why episode number 3, it's going to be us being less pragmatic as we were today and try to paint a picture of what a digital workforce that is supported by multi-agents could look like. And more importantly, readiness for us to come and do it. And I'd love for you to close with kind of what your thoughts of towards episode number 3. But today, I wake up with this mindset, right? AI supports me. I connect. This is how my humanness and the aspect of benefiting from AI makes me a super professional. AI supports me, amplifies me, so then I can come and connect, right? Because that's what I know how to do well, and I just don't have. I need systems that send the emails, that respond to messages, that do repetitive and replicable work at scale. Your vibes towards episode 3 and kind of where closing this interesting episode of Multimodal Artists. Take us home.
So I guess when we're going to focus on episode 3 is the AI workforce, right? So we move from assistants to AI workforce, essentially creating an AI workforce to, and we're going to focus how organizations really transition from using individual AI assistants like they are today to managing kind of this full AI workforce, with the emphasis on organizational change and how do you manage it. How do you think about the future workforce models in terms of how this AI? And of course, these aren't things that we're experts at, but we're going to bring a whole bunch of research and start thinking about, hey, here's the predictions from from this research company or from this consulting company and so on and so forth, or this analyst, and how we think about that in the future. So what does the hybrid human AI workforce look like? How do you manage AI workers, right? And what's the role of IT in this?
IT is the new HR.
Exactly, and that's what Jensen Wang said, right? He said that IT departments are going to be transformed into HR departments. They're going to be the new HR department of the future because they're working with all these AI agents. So we're gonna try to bring a little bit of that to next episode and start thinking about where that's happening today, and then how we see it, and what is the research, and where do we think is going to be in 6 months, and then in the near future as well, as we bring this AI assistance into our day-to-day work.
Nicely said, Ardis. I hope you all have enjoyed the build up. There, episode 1, episode 2, they build from each other, so then we can take it into episode 3, as Ardis just said, and basically paint a picture that is informed by trends, research, and data. But everybody, we're not talking about generative AI in these 2 episodes. We're talking about the new version of AI that is emerging or has emerged, how we are painting that picture for higher education, and how we are basically giving you the translation of what it is and how to do it. And today was a beautiful episode. Thank you, Ardis, for demystifying multi-agent collaboration and ecosystems. I hope you all enjoy it. Remember, this is episode 2 out of a sequence. If you wanted to understand the building blocks, the framework, the components, go to episode 1 so that this episode makes a ton of sense. Ardis, nice job, my friend.
Thanks, JC, as always. Rate us, everybody, and let us know, if we can change anything. Till next time. Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.